So this is my Ironman Copenhagen race review. 140.6 miles of swim, bike, run completed. Spoiler alert, I did finish. Overall, it was a fantastic day, but one that started with a completely flat front tyre that wouldn't inflate, and was then quickly followed on the swim by the worst calf cramp I've ever had in my life, and I actually thought my race was going to be over, but more to that a little bit later. What I'm going to do is first explain some of the details about the race, registration, location, that kind of thing. Hopefully that will be helpful to anyone considering in the race, and then I'm going to do my actual review. So Copenhagen is relatively compact and easy to get around. If you're flying into Copenhagen, you need to take line M2 on the metro, about 7 or 8 stops to the centre. So our tube stop, which was right in the centre, was called Kongens Nytorv. So you're looking at about a 40-minute metro ride. There's only 4 lines in Copenhagen, so it's all very easy. In terms of how the race is set up, it's a split transition. So the swim start and T1 are actually very close to the airport, so you take that same line back out on registration, bike racking and race day morning, but this time it's only about 6 stops. T2 and the finish are right in the centre of Copenhagen. So our hotel was the Admiral Hotel, which was right on the waterfront. Actually, both the bike course and both sides of the run course go past the hotel. So it's a perfect location, very close to T2 and very close to the finish. So although it's going to take you about 45 minutes on race day morning to get to the start from there, I'd highly recommend that as a hotel, as it's a really nice hotel. No issues with leaving your bike in the room. They do a special Ironman breakfast on the Sunday, but I didn't bother with that. But yeah, just a great hotel and great location. Some people did stay out near T1, but for me, that's going to be a real hassle getting home after the race when you're tired. And the last thing you want to do is be lugging bags and your bike back on the metro. So yeah, I would stay centrally, and I would highly recommend the Admiral Hotel. So as I said, T1 and Swim Start and also Race Village are out towards the airport. The station you want to take or get off at is called Femeren, so that you can use the same line that you took in to come from the airport. From Femeren station, it's very self-explanatory. You just head down the road and eventually you will enter the Armiger Strand Park, but you're probably looking at about a 15-minute walk from the station to the race village. In terms of registration, that can be done Thursday, Friday or Saturday. We arrived very late Thursday night, so we did registration on Friday morning, apart from a 20-minute queue and a bit of dawdling in the expo. It was all very smooth and very easy. So picked up my various transition bags and all the various stickers. There were no arm tattoos, by the way, in case anyone loves putting an Ironman tattoo. They don't do those at Copenhagen anymore. So took all that back to the hotel and got everything ready. Then I racked my bike on the Saturday morning, put my blue bike bag on the hook that you're supposed to, which is numbered, and then put my red run bag in a green bin so that the organisers could then take that into the centre for me to pick up eventually in T2. So that was all pretty smooth and pretty easy again. So on to race day. Like a lot of people, I don't sleep very well the night before a triathlon, particularly an Ironman. So I got up at 4 a.m. I'm one of these people, I definitely need time to mentally prepare myself, have a coffee, all of that sort of thing. So I'd allowed myself an hour in the hotel room to get myself together, and then I'd allowed an hour to get from my hotel to the race start. It actually took 45 minutes, so I had plenty of time, as I thought, because my start time was 7:50. Unfortunately for me, when I reached my bike, my front tyre was completely flat, which was a bit of a worry because the tyre was absolutely fine when I racked it. I pumped up the tyre only for it to be completely flat again within a minute. Pumped it up again, same thing happened. I run tubeless tyres, so although I was in a bit of a panic at this point, it did occur to me that perhaps the sealant had somehow settled, even though that had never happened to me before. So I spun the wheel round quite a few times, pumped it up again, then spun the wheel round immediately after it was inflated. And this seemed to do the trick. Thankfully, the pressure now held. I still came back to my bike several times afterwards to double check it after going to the loo and stuff like that. And thankfully, my tyre did hold up. So after that, I went to the swim practice area to try and relax because I was pretty anxious and wound up at this point after the tyre incident. The water was lovely, perfect temperature. It was a lovely sunny day, and this did definitely help relax me a bit. I am not the fastest Ironman swimmer by any stakes. I'm also a pretty nervous swimmer, having had several panic attacks in the past, including at last year's Outlaw Full. I did finish that swim last year, but it really was a bad experience. I've also dislocated my left shoulder numerous times. So I've been to hospital 10 times to have that put back in, including twice during swims. So I'm a pretty wary swimmer, and it's always on my mind that I could have shoulder problems. I did have shoulder surgery at the end of 2019, but I still will probably never trust my shoulder. That said, sooner rather than later, I was in the water, and the race had begun, and at that point, all nerves just melt away and you get on with the job. As I said, the water temperature was lovely. It wasn't the clearest, and there's quite a lot of seaweed in the water. It didn't taste salty really, so that was great because I do tend to, unfortunately, take in a bit of water when I swim. But the conditions were perfect. The swim is in a protected lagoon, so there was pretty much no chop whatsoever. So the beginning of the swim really couldn't have started better. They set you off in 4s every 6 seconds, so there was no washing machine effect. It was a far nicer swim start than Tenby that I'd done in July, which was a mass swim start. So everything was going well, but when I reached the turnaround point of the swim, suddenly I got terrible calf cramp in my left calf. I've never felt anything like it. I've never really had that with swimming before. and I was really scared that my race was effectively over. I just tried to kick my leg a lot more than I had been doing, and tried to keep my foot really floppy. And although at first that really did nothing, and I was just getting increasingly anxious and scared that it was going to be game over, eventually this did seem to work. And although I could still feel the calf, it eased off, and I was able to just keep going. In sections, the swim is very, very shallow, and in fact, from that turnaround point for quite a long way, it was very shallow, and there was one guy near me who literally kept standing up and then jumping back in, which I thought was cheating, but there you go. Eventually, we reached the final turn section, which I thought at that point was going to be a couple of minutes from the end, but actually it was about 600 meters from the end, so it took a lot longer than I thought and felt like an eternity. But eventually I got out of the water in 1 hour 29, which was bang on for what I'd hoped for. And so I was really chuffed with that. It was then a short run up, grab your bag, put your shoes and helmet on, and slap a bit of sun cream on, and then a slow jog to my bike. I could feel my calf, but it wasn't having too much impact at this point, so I just had to get on with it, really. Onto the bike then. It was a beautiful day, conditions were perfect, the roads were amazing. The first section of the bike course from the swim start into the city centre is very flat and very fast. So it really is a case of getting as aero as possible and holding as much speed as you can. I took this deliberately steady because I was very aware of the fact that I had 112 miles to do, and don't start off too hard. Once you go into the city centre, it slows down quite a bit, or it did for me anyway. There are quite a few sharp turns. So at this point, I concentrated more about not having an accident, not coming off, and I worried less about speed because it was so early in the bike, and I just thought better to be safe than sorry. Once you're out of the city centre, the next section was my favourite section on the bike. It's incredibly fast, flat, and the best road surfaces that you could cycle on, with beautiful views out to the coast. So it's a case again of get as aero as possible and try and hold as much speed as you can. But it was a fantastic section of the bike. When you turn inland at the top there, you're then on much narrower roads. The road surface isn't quite as good, and there's a lot more turns. So I did find that section a bit slower, and that's the only real section of the bike course where there's quite a lot of undulations. So that section was quite a bit slower for me. Eventually you're back on the main road, which is much quicker, albeit still with some undulations. Eventually you go through Gales Backer, which is where there's a lot of vocal support. So it's really, really great going through there. It is up a small hill, but nothing to worry about really. Certainly nothing compared to the roads I ride on in the UK. And then again, it's fairly fast and flat on what is basically a dual carriageway, back round to finish the lap, and then you're on to lap 2. For me, I'd been struggling with neck pain for the month in the run up. I'd had a pretty long season because I'd done a half Ironman at the beginning of June, and then long course weekend beginning of July. So I'd been doing a lot of long bikes in the aero position, and that combined with swimming, I think had given me a bit of a neck problem. So once I got onto lap 2, I was needing to take more and more breaks from the aero bars, and I was sitting up more and more. So I definitely slowed down, unfortunately, because of that. Also, because of my calf, I was taking it a bit steadier than I'd planned. So I was going about 10 watts easier than planned, because I was very aware that my calf wasn't in the best shape and I didn't want to screw it up for the run. I had hoped to go sub 6 hours. In the end, I came in 6 hours 11 minutes, so I was a little bit disappointed with that, but overall, it wasn't the end of the world. I had to completely change my nutrition strategy. I had packed 4 bottles, each with 3 scoops of precision hydration carb mix, and I'd also packed 6 high 5 energy bars and planned to have an energy bar every hour. But I drank all 4 of my bottles within the first 2 hours, and I was still very thirsty. So I decided I needed fluids. I also wasn't enjoying the energy bars, even though in training they'd been fine. I was struggling to eat them. So I decided to really kind of change things up, and I started taking on the on-course Gatorade bottles. So in total I had 4 Gatorade bottles, each 750ml. So that was 8 750ml bottles, or 6 litres of fluid that I drank on the course, and only 3 energy bars. When I got into T2, I tried to go to the loo and I literally couldn't pee. So I knew I was pretty horribly dehydrated at that point. Luckily, I had already decided that I would take a Camelback on the run. So I had 1500ml of fluids with me, with 6 scoops of precision hydration carb mix, and I'd also taken enough gels so I could take a gel every 3 miles. Those were the high 5 gels, because I enjoy those, whereas the on-course gels were Merton, and I had hated those in training when I tried them. So the run course is fantastically well supported. I actually got pretty emotional on lap 1, just because the sheer volume of support at times was so incredible. The first 4 or 5 miles I was flying along and it felt amazing, and the support was incredible. Unfortunately though, for me, I hate laps, and lap 2 I really struggled with mentally. My speed was okay, but I really was finding it tough mentally. At the one end of the run course, out towards the Little Mermaid and the cruise ships, there are a few undulations there, nothing huge, but when you're tired they feel a lot bigger than they are when you're fresh. But yeah, at the halfway stage I was finding it tough. My Camelback ran out at this point at about 13 miles, so I threw it in a bin because I was very worried about being disqualified if I handed it to someone. Up to this point I'd been following a 9-minute run, 1-minute walk strategy, which had worked really well for me. Thankfully at this point I ended up striking up conversation with another English guy, and we stayed together for pretty much the last half of the race. I changed strategy now, and so did he, to running the whole time but walking the aid stations, as I now needed to use on-course fluids on the run, and I wanted to make sure I still had walk breaks but managed to get fluids inside. The second half of the run for me, although I was a tiny bit slower overall, was a lot easier mentally, and I was feeling stronger and stronger by the end. my run buddy actually said to me with just over a mile to go to crack on, because I think he was starting to struggle, and I think it was obvious that I was feeling good. So I pushed on then for the last mile or so, and I was feeling really good. At that point it felt amazing because I knew nothing could stop me, and this thing was finally going to be over. I let out a roar of emotion when I followed the bend into the finishing chute, which the crowd seemed to like because they cheered, and I tried to G up the crowd by windmilling my arms on the finishing straight, and crossed the line in 4 hours 40 for the run. I had hoped in my wildest dreams to go under 4.5 hours, which is probably half an hour slower than I'd probably do in a standalone marathon. But in truth, I didn't really know what I was capable of, and certainly with the calf, it might have slowed me down a bit. So overall, 4 hours 40, I'm pretty happy with. In my wildest dreams, I thought if everything went perfectly, I'd finish in 12.5 hours. In the end, I was 12 hours 36. So very, very happy indeed with that. I don't think I could have got much more out of myself. I could have been a little bit quicker on the bike, I think, but it wouldn't have made a huge difference overall. So yeah, very chuffed with that. So just in final words, really, if anyone is thinking about doing an Ironman, Copenhagen is a fantastic course, particularly if you're a beginner, I think, because it's got a flatter bike. The support on the run particularly was just out of this world and incredible. The Danes are incredibly hospitable people and just lovely people in general. We really enjoyed our time in Copenhagen before, during and after the race. So yeah, I would recommend Copenhagen to anyone. I hope this video has been helpful if you are considering Copenhagen, and if you are thinking about doing your first Ironman, just go for it. It'll change your life. All right, cheers, bye-bye.